What's happening, everybody? On today's show, who in the SEC can actually win a national championship this year? The blue chip ratio is out. We'll tell you if your school can actually win it all. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we're going to hit on that Bud Elliott blue chip ratio. We'll also hit on EA Sports, their offensive and defensive team rankings. Where did the SEC teams rank in that? And also, how much is Nick Saban making from Alabama now as an employee? We'll hit on all that. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Check out FanDuel. They're hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Bud Elliott over at CBS Sports, his blue chip ratio is out to compete for a national championship. And if you're not familiar, to put it simply, to win a national championship, college football teams need to sign more 4- and 5-star recruits, aka blue chippers, than 2- and 3-star players over their previous 4 recruiting classes. This has been true basically as far back as modern internet recruiting rankings have existed. I think Bud Elliott introduced it back in 2013, calling it the blue chip ratio. And look, a lot of times media are going to hype up different teams as a national championship contender, but know this, there are only this list of teams that can win the national championship this year. It has been proven time and time again. Recruiting matters. If you got the blue chippers, you're going to be in the running to win a national championship. And we just saw it last year. Look, it does not guarantee a national championship, but as Bud Elliott writes, a team not meeting it is almost certainly guaranteed not to win it all. And recruiting rankings, they're not perfect, but they're pretty damn good in figuring out what players are good and what players are not. And as Bud Elliott writes, 5 stars are about 33 times more likely to be All-Americans as, say, 2 stars. In this ratio and how he did it, all scholarship signees count. Transfers and walk-ons do not. He said transfers were not included in this calculation. Through 4 years of heavy recruiting or heavy transfer portal activity, national titles are not being won primarily through the portal, as he writes. Michigan did have a few last year, but most of the team was developed out of high school. Georgia did not take a single scholarship transfer in 2022 and had little reliance on it in 2021. The best teams recruit high school very well and then look to fill their holes or upgrade in spots via the portal. So as we dive into it, the squads that meet the 50% requirement make this list of teams that can actually win the national championship. And as he points out, every national champion since 2011 has had a roster of over 50% blue chip high school recruits. Clemson was the closest call with a 52% blue chip signing in 2013 through 2016. But here's how it shook out. 2023, Michigan won it all. They had a 54%. Remember, you want to be over that 50% threshold of the last 4 years. Georgia, they took home the title in 2022. They had a 77%. In 2021, they had an 80%. Bama in 2020 had an 83%. LSU in 2019 had a 64%. Again, so on and so forth. This thing keeps rolling on. But as one might expect this year, the SEC, a strong presence in the 2024 blue chip ratio rankings. Ohio State leads the way at 90%, but 8 of the 16 teams are from the SEC, and 13 of the 16 come from the SEC and the Big Ten. So who are we talking about here? Who are some teams that can actually win a national championship this year? We start with Alabama. Right behind Ohio State at 90% blue chip ratio, Alabama comes in at 88%. So again, Alabama, big time in here. And if you look at some of the sportsbook odds, you know, they're anywhere from 1,000 plus 1,000 to plus 1,400 to win it all. You can get some pretty good odds on Alabama as a national champion. So Alabama very much in play to win a national championship this year. Right behind them at 80% blue chip ratio is Georgia at 80%. So Georgia makes this cut. Obviously missed out on the three-peat last year, but very much in the running to compete and perhaps win a national championship this year. Behind them, very interesting this one, Texas A&M on this list. Now, a lot of this has to do with those classes that Jimbo Fisher signed, right? I mean, the blue chip ratio is just going by 4- and 5-star recruits. and A&M signed a ton of 4- and 5-star recruits the last couple of years. So 79%, A&M is in here. Now, look, Mike Elko, you got a new coach, so it's going to be tough to win it all. But, hey, you want to take a shot? They fall into this category, teams that can win a championship this year. Behind them, it's Oregon at 76%. Sticking with the SEC, behind them, it's Oklahoma at 73%. So Oklahoma in the running here. If Brent Venables strikes gold with Jackson Arnold as quarterback, Oklahoma could certainly fit this criteria. They do in terms of the blue chip ratio. So want to believe in Oklahoma, want to place a bet on them. I mean, I think they're pretty long odds. I want to say like plus 6,500, some books. Check FanDuel, see what you could get on Oklahoma to win it all. But they fall into this category. Next up, it's Texas. And, you know, they're one of the sexy picks this year, too, win it all. Obviously, Sark took a huge step forward last year. They made the playoff, but 72% blue chip ratio class signees the last 4 years. So Texas falls into this category. Another one, LSU, they're typically always in here, always recruit well. 70% blue chip ratio for LSU. And again, pretty good, odds on them if you want to jump on the Garrett Nussmeier bandwagon and think that LSU can win a national championship. Behind them, Notre Dame, Clemson. How about this one? This is really taking a long shot, but Florida, 63% blue chip ratio. Now you can get Florida like plus 25,000 win a championship this year because their schedule is absolutely brutal. Again, blue chip ratio is not looking at schedule and strength of schedule and tough games, tough home games, road games, whatever. But 63% blue chip ratio for Florida. They are one of the 8 SEC teams that join this list. And look at the rest of the way. It's Miami at 61%, Penn State at 61%, Southern Cal at 59%. Michigan's in here again at 56%, the reigning champs. And rounding out the top 16 teams in the blue chip ratio, the Auburn Tigers, Hugh Freeze and company, 53% blue chip ratio. So to recap, if we're looking at the SEC teams that in the blue chip ratio can have the ability or the chance to win a national championship this year, it's Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Texas, LSU, Florida, and Auburn. Now comes the big question. Who's missing from this list? Well, if it's your school, you're going, who's missing? Ole Miss. They jump out as a notable team. They won 11-2 last year. New Year's Six Bowl win. Obviously, top transfer portal class, Lane Kiffin. He could buck this trend, right? I mean, Bud Elliott's ratios and everything, it doesn't take into account transfers. So if Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin have upgraded their roster that dramatically through the portal and, they make the playoff, they have a chance to go on a run and could certainly buck the blue chip ratio trend. Another one that narrowly missed, the Tennessee Volunteers. As Bud Elliott writes, he said, by the narrowly misses the minimum threshold and transcendent quarterback standard, Tennessee is the most obvious candidate to bust the ratio in 2024. They came in at 46%, so just below that 50% threshold. Bud says quarterback Nico Iamaleava has a special physical talent. If Tennessee could stay healthy at offensive line in the secondary, perhaps the Volunteers could pull off something special. But what's going to be so interesting is, look, the playoff is going to change things, right? I mean, we may have a dark horse, somebody break through that, maybe couldn't get through in the 4-team format or even the BCS format before that. And, look, transfer portal could throw this whole thing off as well. We talked about it before. All it takes is one team to get hot. Who are some other teams that maybe could be in the running here? How about Missouri? Missouri is in that Ole Miss category as well. Double-digit wins last year. They got the quarterback thing figured out. Brady Cook, Luther Burden is a Heisman contender. How much does the defense take a step back with all the guys they lost to the draft and graduation? Losing Blake Baker to LSU. We'll see. But I think Mizzou is certainly a team that could be considered in that mix amongst all the others. But, again, it's not gospel, but Bud Elliott, he knows what he's doing, man, with that blue chip ratio. It's wild when you go back and look at all the years and these teams and how they finished, and where they finished in recruiting with signing 4 and 5 stars. Again, what Elliott says, 4 and 5 star recruits are about 10 times more likely to be drafted in the first round than their 2 and 3 star counterparts, and 5 stars are 33 times more likely to be All-Americans than 2 stars are. So, point being here, you sign the best talent, you're going to have a good chance at winning a national championship. It's just wild that the numbers say if you finish with that many blue chip recruits over your past 4 recruiting classes, you can win a national championship. So, again, we'll see. Can Ole Miss or Tennessee buck that trend this year? I don't know. But, hey, maybe you can get some good odds, again, on Auburn and Florida to win the national championship. All right, thank you guys for making a Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll hit on those EA Sports offensive and defensive rankings. That is coming your way here in just a second. Hey, but first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from roof racks, exhaust kits, superchargers, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. With that eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with that eBay Guaranteed Fit, again, guaranteed to fit your ride or your money back. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home huge victories. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. That is ebaymotors.com. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Check out our friends over at Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, streaming with all the biggest stories in the sports world. Check it out, Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So we dive back into it. Look, EA Sports, they have released their top 25 offensive power rankings and defensive power rankings for the game coming up later this summer. It's just a couple of weeks away, coming out in mid-July, and they're getting everybody excited about releasing rankings and all this kind of stuff. So I want to start a little bit and run through where they have some of the SEC teams ranked. For those of you video gamers out there, look, there's some parallel here. They're using based on criteria on what they think these teams are going to look like, rosters and all that. So let's dive into it let's start with offensive power rankings first. And we start with in the SEC, coming in number 1 is the Georgia Bulldogs. Top offense in the country, top offense in the video game coming this summer. Of course, Carson Beck is among the Heisman favorites. They bring back Trevor Etienne, bring in Trevor Etienne from Florida. And, man, offensive line looks good. Receiving core mostly back intact. Defense needs to replace a couple of pieces, but they should be pretty good as well. So Georgia coming in number 1 in the offensive power rankings in EA Sports video game. Coming in number 3, it's Alabama. They are a 91 overall. So Georgia 94 overall, Alabama 91 overall. They say the Alabama offense going to be pretty good with Jalen Milroe, dual threat quarterback. I know a lot of people play the video games, like to have that. Think back to playing Madden when you had Michael Vick and all that kind of stuff. So great offensive line as well. So Alabama coming in at number 3. Coming in at number 4, kind of tied with them, it's Texas. And, of course, you got Quinn Ewers back at quarterback. They do bring in Isaiah Bond, former Alabama wide receiver, Amari Niblack, former Alabama tight end. Running back, they got C.J. Baxter back, Jadon Blue. This is a really good group and a lot of offensive firepower. So Texas coming in at number 4. Also in the SEC, they got LSU at number 6. An 89 overall. Garrett Nussmeier replacing Jaden Daniels. I know some people say, well, you got to replace the Heisman Trophy winner. That's not easy, but Garrett Nussmeier's been around LSU a while, knows elements of the offense, obviously new OC, but had him coach him in the bowl game, looked pretty darn good, looked good in the spring game. One of the better offensive lines in the country with that tackle duo of Emory Jones and Will Campbell. Kyron Lacey, pretty reliable wide receiver last year behind the 2 first-rounders. So LSU, some people might say it's a little high for LSU, but I get they're being overly optimistic. And LSU is coming off just having a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So certainly a lot of pieces there in that offense. Coming in at number 9, we talked about Missouri a few minutes ago. They're an 89 overall on offense in the video game. Brady Cook is back. Luther Burden, one of the best wide receivers in the country. Theo Weiss, also very good. And offensive line transfers, Caden Green, Marcus Bryant. So Missouri, a top 10 offense. Didn't think I'd be talking about that today, but rounded out in the top 25 offensive power rankings on EA Sports. They've got Ole Miss at number 13. Rebel fans, not going to like that. Got them behind Missouri and behind LSU. I thought Ole Miss would be higher on this list. We'll see what they have Jackson Dart and others ranked. I bet if, look, Spiro, if Quinshon Judkins was back at Ole Miss, they'd be a lock to be a top 10 team, maybe even top 5 offense. Coming in number 18, Texas A&M. A lot of people very high on Connor Wegman. I like their run game. I like the O-line. I like the running backs. Noah Thomas, a wide receiver. And then coming in number 23 is Oklahoma. And a lot of that's predicated on Jackson Arnold, freshman quarterback. If he lives up to the hype, Oklahoma's offense is going to be very good. So those are the offensive power rankings according to EA Sports in the video game coming out in a couple weeks. Now, over on the defensive side, this is where a lot of people got critical of the rankings. Coming in, they got Ohio State at number 1 overall, Georgia at number 2 overall. Georgia fans were not happy about that. They were saying we should be number 1 on this list. And, they did the top ranked toughest places to play. They had Sanford Stadium at number 5 on that list. So Georgia at number 2, Oregon comes in at number 3, Alabama at number 4. So a little bit of a trend here. Alabama and Georgia's top 3 offenses and top 4 defenses. Remember, it's a video game. We're not predicting, that this is how it's going to play out, but in the video game to start the year, this is where they are. They lose a ton on defense to the draft and to the portal. Alabama does, but they bring back enough that people are optimistic that the defense will still be just as strong. We shall see. Life post Nick Saban. The rest of the defensive teams coming in number 8 on the defensive power rankings list is Texas. They bring in Big Trey Moore from UTSA, outstanding edge rusher, including Andre Makuba. So Texas as a top 8 defensive team in the video game. And then you got to go down a little bit. Oklahoma comes in at number 12 overall, 88 overall ranking in the video game. Auburn comes in at number 17. How about Auburn as a top 17 defense there, in 86 overall? LSU comes in at number 18 and 84 overall defense. This just has to be because they ranked Harold Perkins as probably like a 90-something player. So if Harold Perkins is that good, and they got other pieces that are pretty good, like, you can't put LSU as like a 70 defense, but that's how they played last year. They played like a 65 or a 70, and they're an 84 overall in this video game. Right behind them, Texas A&M at number 19. Mike Elko's going to have a tough-nosed defense, if anything. And then the only other SEC team coming in the top 25 on the EA Sports defensive power rankings, Florida at 84 overall. So Florida's got something going for them. It's a brutal schedule, but they come in there. One more nugget on the video game that is coming out here in a couple weeks. A quick note on the Texas Longhorns. EA Sports gone out of their way to make the game very authentic, but according to one report from Chris Vanini of The Athletic, Horns Down will not be included in the video game. So if you're playing the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma, you will not see any Horns Down action. Now, Vanini did say, I've been told that Horns Down will not be in the video game. However, Texas fans in the crowd will be seen doing the traditional hook 'em horns. So you'll see horns up. You just won't see horns down. So there you have it. Look, I get it. Not all you are into the college football video game, but I like it. A lot of our listeners do, and so thought it would be a cool thing to touch on. There's still more to come here on the Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. First, I want to remind you guys this episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, we love sports. As the playoffs wind down, we're getting fewer and fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like you want them to. But FanDuel, they let you keep the sports going wherever you want, whenever you want, All you have to do is open up the FanDuel app and come up with any bets at any time. This summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Plenty of action to get into, including some week one lines like Oklahoma minus 41.5 against Temple. If you think that, maybe Temple can hang around in that one, you can take Temple plus the 41.5. If you like Oklahoma to absolutely demolish them and cover the 41.5, you can do that. Vanderbilt, they are 13.5-point underdogs to Virginia Tech. Jump on Vandy plus the 13.5 if you believe in that offense. And Clark Lee in year 3 there in Nashville. And then, of course, Georgia minus 13.5 against Clemson. That line's kind of moved around a little bit. So if you believe in Dabo and Clemson to cover, but you still like Georgia to win, you can do that. But if you like Georgia to just demolish Clemson, cover the 13.5, take Georgia minus the 13.5. It's all there for you at FanDuel. It is FanDuel.com/lockedon, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. I wanted to jump into this story. Nick Saban, former Alabama head coach Nick Saban, is in a new role with the Crimson Tide, playing a more administrative role where he's using his knowledge and expertise, helping out recruiting, whatever it is he can do to help out. But his salary, a lot of people are wondering, what is Alabama going to be paying old Nick Saban? And according to the Tuscaloosa News, Nick Saban will be paid $500,000 per year. Nick Saban talked about his new role back in February. He said, I'm anxious to see what we can do, whatever we can do to continue to support Alabama athletics and the athletic program, the football program, and hope that the players and the coaches that are there continue to have a great amount of success. Of course, we know Nick Saban's going to be joining the cast and crew of College Game Day with ESPN. He was part of their draft coverage. We'll see if he's there with SEC Media Days. But we know he's there lurking in the shadows, helping out anything Kalen DeBoer needs to do. I almost wonder if they're using him as a closer. Hey, Kalen DeBoer or Kane Womack's got this recruit on campus. Hey, Nick, why don't you come over and close the deal here? Let's get this commitment in. But $500,000 a year, not a bad salary per year for a retired head coach. Still lending his expertise and helping out. And speaking of that, in some recruiting news, Alabama doing a good job of recruiting without Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer picking up a commitment from linebacker Dawson Merritt, 4-star linebacker out of the state of Kansas. Picked the Tide over Nebraska. He is 6'3", 215 pounds. 24/7 Sports Composite ranks him as one of the best players from the state, the 11th linebacker in the country for the class of 2025. He's a top 100 player, checking out number 92 overall for the cycle. And that gives Alabama 6 players ranked inside the top 100 recruits for the class of 2025, along with 5-star linebacker Darrell Johnson, 4-star safety Derek Smith, and 4-star corner Chuck McDonald. So Alabama getting it going there on the recruiting front, even though Kalen DeBoer has not coached a game there yet. Over at Georgia, Bulldogs picking up, tidbit on Georgia. Offensive lineman Kelton Smith has medically retired from playing football. He was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2023, was the 13th ranked interior offensive lineman in that cycle in 2023. And details regarding why he's been forced to medically retire, not currently available. Dogs HQ reporting there are multiple issues he's currently dealing with. So wish that young man the best of luck. But they'll be down one O-lineman on the roster. Now, there was some good news for Georgia. Fast-rising wide receiver Landon Roldan committed to the Georgia Bulldogs. 3-star wide receiver rated by On3 and the industry ranking. Just came off a visit to Georgia and announced his commitment to the hometown Bulldogs. Ran a 4.4 40-yard dash. He's 6'1", 180 pounds, and he now joins Georgia's 3 current receiver commitments in the class of 2025, including Taylon Taylor, Tyler Williams, and Thomas Blackshear. So good pickup there for Kirby Smart and company. And there you have it. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back and check us out on Monday. Next week, we'll have some great interviews and other content we'll be bringing to you right here on Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. You guys have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you then. Peace.